Birth of Jesus Part 6, but I hope I can put out the point to just don't believe what you're told. Check it out. You know, be like the Bereans. They studied the Scriptures. They searched the Scriptures. Just because somebody said it doesn't mean it's true. You check me out. And when it comes to the story, to the Christmas story, most of it is gained from Christmas cards and TV shows and not Scriptures. And you know, I've brought around, I bet you guys didn't know that the only time the shepherds were out into the field with that flock was to bring in the Passover lambs. You know, just some little things of that nature. But you know, we think there was 3 wise men that came to the manger. And that's not in the Bible. We think the shepherds was there at the manger and the little drummer boy and the wise men. But the drummer boy's not even there. We think it was 3 kings. Nowhere in the Bible does it say 3 kings. They didn't follow a star across the desert. I wonder you're thinking, what? Now, wait a minute. I know the star's in there. What happened was, way later, I forget, I told you when they really tried to bring in the Christmas story. I can't remember when that was, but the church began to get filled with a bunch of apostasy. A bunch of lies and myths and legends, and it was just adopted because you had all the paganism of Rome and the church and everybody combined. It was just a melting pot, and boom, there it was. It's no different today in the United States. Really, there's only one church, but everybody puts a sign up, thinks their doctrine is right. And you know, that's why Jesus would say, I am the truth. You will come to me that you might have life. You search the Scriptures, you think you got the right doctrine. And you know, we throw out all them little things, believe a lie and be damned. So now they put us in more fear, because if I mess up my belief system, I'm going to be damned. And you know, and it's pulling Scriptures out of context. And the way we can control people is to keep them scared. So I just want to go over some of these things here in the Scriptures with you today. So I'm going to be in Matthew 2. And I'm going to start reading verse 1. Now when Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea in the days of Herod the king, behold, there came wise men from the east to Jerusalem, saying, Where is he that's born King of the Jews? For we have seen his star in the east and are come to worship him. When Herod the king had heard these things, he was troubled, and all Jerusalem with him. When he had gathered all the chief priests and the scribes of the people together, he demanded of them where the Christ should be born. They said unto him, Bethlehem of Judea, for thus it is written by the prophet, And thou, Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, art not the least among the princes of Judah, for out of thee shall come a governor that shall rule my people. That's a verse quoted out of Micah. Then Herod, when he had privately called the wise men, inquired of them diligently what time the star appeared. And he sent them to Bethlehem and said, Go and search diligently for the young child. When you found him, bring me word again that I may come and worship him also. They had heard the king, they departed, and lo, the star which they saw in the east went before them, till it came and stood over where the young child was. And when they saw the star, they rejoiced with exceeding great joy. And when they were coming to the house, they saw the young child with Mary and his mother, and fell down and worshipped him. And when they opened their treasures, they presented to him gifts, gold, frankincense, and myrrh. Being warned of God in a dream that they should not return to Herod, they departed into their own country another way. Just notice what I read right there. The wise men did not go to the manger. They went to the house. They went to the house. And this word here, the young child, you know, the Greeks had different words. Their language wasn't as lazy as the American language. And I say language, lazy. We'll use one word to describe a whole bunch of things, you know, like love. God is love, and I love puppies. Love is not the same thing. Okay? So the Greeks would describe children in different ways. That this war, you know, when you go to buy baby clothes, you know, there's on one of them that says newborn. And then one of them will say like 3 months, 6 months, you know, whatever. Well, this is one of those Greek words. So that puts this baby being about between 1 to 2 years old. Probably closer to about 1.5 years old. Mary and Joseph had moved from the inn. Remember we said there was no room in the inn, meaning they didn't have a place in the wall. You remember it was a big old cave, and so they had to give birth out here where all the animals, you know, the same thing, be like you giving birth in a parking lot. But they had moved out of the inn into a house. And remember they had stayed there, we talked about last week, because of the purification process. Remember, they had to at least stay there 6 weeks for the purification process. But according to this Greek word, young child, we know they had been there for a while. Now, at this time, you know this was a time of great pondering. They used to make fun of me when I was in Chicago because I'd say, let me ponder on it. They said, that must be a southern word. I thought, don't y'all ponder on nothing? I ponder on it. You know, it was a time of great pondering. I mean, she's shut in the house for 6 weeks at least, you know. Can you imagine just sitting there, you're shut in, you can't have no contact with anybody. Reflecting in your mind, the angel showed up. So wait a minute, I'm about to give birth to Emmanuel? Virgin birth? I was there when Zechariah prophesied and pointed right at me and began to speak about this son. All these crazy shepherds showed up at the manger. I mean, you know, Joseph had a dream not to put me away. I mean, you know, just try to put yourself there. I mean, a lot of things have taken place in our life. You know, if we'll just sit back and look, a lot of things have taken back in our life. A lot of reflection, a lot of pondering. And afterwards, I just got to throw this out there to you. And you can read this in Luke 2:39. After they presented Jesus after the 6 weeks, you remember the 40 days for her purification when they brought him up to the temple? After they presented Jesus for the 40 days, they didn't go back to Bethlehem, they went to Nazareth. Luke tells us in Luke 2:39, I believe, after they left the temple, they went back to Nazareth. Well, here they are in Bethlehem. So they probably went back to Nazareth because this was a time of pondering. And they knew the scripture says this child is to be brought up in Bethlehem. So they go back to Nazareth to get all their stuff. Remember, they had to go to Bethlehem for the tax decree. So they just, you know, they had to get there in a hurry. So they still got a house in Nazareth, Joseph does. So after the 40 days purification, they leave the temple, go back to Nazareth to get all their stuff. And probably another reason they didn't want to go back to Nazareth was because, remember, when we first started out, Mary's reputation wasn't too good. I mean, who in the world gives birth by a virgin birth? I mean, come on, we're not stupid, right? So probably a lot of talk and rumors going on around. So they moved back to Bethlehem. So a lot of I just want you to get in that head there. Now, as I said, Jesus is probably he's somewhere between 1 to 2 years old. And when I'm looking at this star here, I'm just kind of covering some stuff with you here. Herod asked when the star appeared, and remember the decree, if this all happened right away, why kill all the babies 2 years old and under? Why not kill all the babies 6 months old and under? Right? So I'm just trying to show you this time frame of when these wise men showed up. Now, the term, and you guys probably know this, the term here for wise men, they're not kings. They are called magi. Magi. They were a sect of wise men in the East. And I don't know why our Christmas cards tell us 3 came. I guess because of the 3 gifts, gold, frankincense, and myrrh. But as I'll show you, there was probably way more than 3. Probably way more than 3. Did you ever just think about what happened in the East to get these guys excited to walk 2,000 miles to get across the Arabian desert to get over here to see this little baby Jesus? I mean, you reckon they got it tweaked? I mean, I'm just wondering, did they get an email, a tweet, or Facebook? Something happened over there to get these guys excited to make this journey and to worship. So they show up at the house 2 years after the shepherds had showed up at the manger. Now, I was looking at a map, and I wish I could do this in reverse order because of the way you're looking at me, but the Magi came from near the Euphrates River. You know the Euphrates River that goes up, flows down to the Persian Gulf. Well, that's on the plumb other side of the Arabian Desert. It's like Israel is here, and the Jordan River's right here. The Euphrates is over here and flows into the Persian Gulf. And over here is this place called Babylon. Okay, it sits way over here. And these magi, they were students. When I say students, studiers of science. They were philosophers. They sought after wisdom. They were astronomers. They studied the sky very intently. They studied medicine. They were deeply religious. Where did they get all this? I mean, when I'm looking at this story, I want to know, how did they turn up when they did? I mean, why did they come? Well, first, they were aware of the possibility of a Messiah. I told you when we started out, this thing wasn't done in a vacuum. It wasn't done in a corner. Remember, I think that's the word that Paul used to Agrippa. This thing wasn't done in a corner. This thing wasn't done in secret. This thing had been anticipated for a long time. So they were aware. All the nations were aware of the possibility of a Messiah being born. And you're thinking, well, how would the other nation know? These things were just given to the Jews. The Lord in His dealings has had this thing out for a long time. Listen, there's 2 sets of prophecy in the Scripture. One, the prophets that we mostly read of, Isaiah, Ezekiel, Jeremiah, Jonah, all them. Who were they given to? They were given to the Jews. Right? Given to the Hebrews. But there's a second set of prophecy that's spoken to or in the midst of the other nations. It's called Gentile prophecy. And most of those prophecies were given near the people in the Euphrates River, Babylon, or in that area. The first prophecy given over there was this guy named Balaam. I remember Balaam. Balaam He was an old witch or a wizard. The place he was from, and you can read this in Numbers, the place he's from, Pethor, I think is the name of it, it even suggests maybe that it's a school for wizards. And I'm using the term wizards here, and I know what you're thinking of, Harry Potter and Dumbledore and pointy hats and all this other stuff, but he claimed to have the ear of every god around. You got to remember, every town had him a god. I mean, you know, it's just like right now you come into Cedar Bluff and we got our god. You go down to Raven and they got their god. You know, you go to Shorts Gap and they got their god. Every town had their god. Well, what these guys were, they claimed to have the ear of every god. So if you need a blessing, you holler at Balaam. Balaam will go talk to your God. You need this land to be cursed, you holler at Balaam because he's got the ear of all the gods. You see what I mean? He's like the insurance God man. You need to talk to God, you call Balaam. Right? Well, Balaam lived on the Euphrates River all the way over here. And you guys... you guys know, I mean, here's Balaam. His reputation goes all over the place. And you can read this. Balaam knew that the God of the Hebrews was the greatest of all gods. He knew that. Then we got this guy Balak. He's the king of Moab. He's got a problem. He looks out and he sees all of Israel. And he says, man, there are so many. He said, they'll lick us up like cows eat grass. What I need to do is get a hold of Balaam over there. Let me send some runners to get Balaam to come over here and bless, or come over here and curse Israel. I need to get him over here and curse Israel. Do you understand what's going on here? I mean, this is what took place in here. I don't know how this even got in the Bible, but I mean, how did Moses? They weren't even around here. Moses had no dealing with these people. This was a Gentile prophecy that Moses got and put in the book of Numbers. Okay, so the king of Moab is hollering for Balaam over here, so Balaam could come over here and get the Hebrew God away so that he could curse them just for a few minutes so that he could go in there and devour Israel. So Balaam is thinking, you know, Balak says, hey, the money's no problem. Why else would he do it? Make all that journey? You got to think, he already knew the Hebrew God was the greatest of all gods. So if I can get the Hebrew God, if I can get the ear of the Hebrew God to do what I want, I'll be the greatest wizard in the land. I'll be it. You see what I mean? Now this kind of, the doctrine of Balaam, trying to manipulate God, you know, we just, so, you guys know the story. Balak says, look, come up here on this mountain, and let me show you these crazy people, and you can curse them. Let me just go over there and get you a couple of scriptures here real quick in Numbers. So, I love every time that Balaam would try to speak, it says God will put a word in his mouth. You know, he's trying to curse them and he can't. A curse will not come out of his mouth. Now this is the wizard. This is the great wizard, reputation known all throughout the Middle East. He's the greatest wizard. Balak has paid him. He's made all this journey, and I could just, you know, it's almost like a cartoon or a TV show. He's trying to curse them, and blessings keep coming out of his mouth. Balak says, well, look at him from here. And he looks down. Oh, I see him. You know, well, come up over here on this mountain. Look at him from a different angle. It didn't matter what angle he looked at. He could not curse Israel. Then he makes this statement right here in Numbers 23. God is not a man that he should lie. Do you ever quote this scripture in this kind of context? God is not a man that he should lie, neither the Son of Man that he should repent. Hath he said, and shall he not do it? If God said He was going to bless you, God is not a man that He should lie, or the Son of Man that He should repent. God said He's going to bless you. Paul got a hold of it and says, you are blessed.
Yes.
With all spiritual blessings. He said it and He did it. And you didn't do a thing to earn it. You can't do a thing to earn it. This is why Balaam began to say, listen, I understand now. I'm beginning to see who this Hebrew God is. He's not a man that he should lie. He said He's going to bless Israel, and there ain't a thing I can do about it. Nothing I can do about it. He's not taking it back. I can't change His mind. And as he went on to speak, look at this. Numbers 24, I'm going to go over here to verse 16. The Spirit of God came upon Balaam. And again, I know it was the Spirit of God because he began to speak of something. Look at verse 16. Hath he said, which heard the words of God and knew the knowledge of the Most High, which saw the vision of the Almighty, fallen into a trance but having his eyes open? Remember we went over that. Fallen into a trance. In other words, the Spirit of God came upon him. And he says this is Balaam speaking. I shall see Him, but not now. I shall behold Him, but not nigh. There shall come a star out of Jacob. A scepter shall rise out of Israel, and shall smite the corners of Moab, and destroy all the children of Sheth. A star, you know, to them, he wasn't talking about a star up in the sky. It's like we would use the term today, a star meant a great person. This is Balaam prophesying over Israel, whom he was paid to come and curse, and he says a star shall come out of Jacob, and a scepter to rule. This is a prophecy that is given by Balaam all the way over here from the east, the river Euphrates. I mean, he was a wizard that was brought under the control of God and blessed to speak. Don't you know that this story was told up and down the banks of the Euphrates River? This is in the book of Numbers. I mean, all the time, you know, they're all saying, hey, remember that Balaam guy? Remember he knew every god around? Remember he used to talk to all these other gods? But you remember him talking about this Hebrew God and a star and a scepter, and he shall rule all nations? I mean, this thing had been going on for 1,500 years. Everybody up and down the Persian Gulf knew. Everybody knew that from the Hebrews was coming a Messiah. One that would be King of Kings and rule all nations. This thing wasn't done in a corner. Wasn't done in a corner. Well, if we move on to the next Gentile prophecy, that brings us up to Nebuchadnezzar. You know who Nebuchadnezzar was? King of Babylon. King of Babylon. He prophesied. You remember what he did? Jeremiah told them they would go away into captivity. The Babylonian Empire was different when they went away to captivity. See, we just think, man, I wish I could go through and tell you about some of these nations. Some of them were ultimate cruel. But the Babylonians went down into Israel. They took them away captive, and you remember God says, go, if you want to live, go into captivity. They went down there and got the best. They went down there and got the nobles of Israel. They went down there and got all the smart people and brought them back up to Babylon and trained them. 4 in particular, Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego, and this little fellow named Daniel. When they graduated from the Babylonian University, they were in the king's court, in the palace with Nebuchadnezzar. They were captives, but they were in the presence of the king. And you remember the old king, Nebuchadnezzar, he has a dream. And see, in those days, when you call of doctor or philosopher or PhD, you got the title of wise men of Babylon. You go look that term up, it's right in there. The wise men of Babylon. So when the king Nebuchadnezzar had his dream, he says, okay, call me the wise men of Babylon. All right, guys, I want you to come and tell me the interpretation of the dream. So all the wise men gather around the king and say, all right, king, give us a dream. Nebuchadnezzar said, well, I don't know what the dream is. And the wise men said, now, come on, king. You tell us the dream. We'll tell you the interpretation thereof. And the king said, it's left me. I don't know it. If you're really wise men, you can tell me the dream and the interpretation thereof. And these wise men began to say, well, there's nobody that can do that. And King Nebuchadnezzar got mad and says, well, off with your heads and I'm going to kill all of you. All the wise men aren't really wise. Well, as they're going down to give the orders, you got 24 hours. All you guys are going to get your heads cut off. They knock on Daniel's door and say, Daniel, you know, in 24 hours they're going to take your head off and kill you. And Daniel says, wait a minute. There is a God who gives dreams and the interpretation thereof. Just give me a little time here. And God gives Daniel the dream that Nebuchadnezzar had and the interpretation of it. And you guys know this. And you dreamed about a great image, a statue, if you will. Had a head of gold, silver chest, and he had his belly and his thighs of brass, legs of iron, feet of clay, right? He said, King Nebuchadnezzar, you're the head of gold. You're the beginning of nations. You're the head. Yet Babylon shall fall. Your place shall be taken by a inferior nation, the chest of silver. And each one will give way to the next, inferior. Until the days of the kings of the legs of iron, the feet of clay. There shall come a stone cut out of the mountain without men's hands. Sounds to me like a virgin birth, don't it? A stone cut out of the mountain without men's hands. I mean, you know, the gold, the silver, the brass, all that, they're all one of the same. They're all one of the same, right? They're all in the same body. But this one is cut out altogether different. Altogether different. This one will be different. He won't just follow the iron. You know, gold, silver, brass, iron. This one won't just altogether different. This little stone will come and smash to pieces. It'll smash this image. I mean, you can read it there in Daniel. And so fine to pieces that it'll be blown away like the chaff and the summer harvest. You know, just rolling the dust. That great image that you see, you'll just be like, gone. Gone. Not only that, that little stone shall grow and grow and increase and grow until it fills the whole earth. And you know what it means naturally, so that right after the Babylon Empire came a lesser kingdom of the Medes and the Persians. We see that right in Daniel. Remember the handwriting on the wall, many, tekel, whatever it is, and all of a sudden, you know, here they show up. Right after the Medes and the Persians comes the Greeks. History tells us who was Alexander the Great. He was a Greek. And who did they give way to? They gave way to the Romans. And he says in the midst of that Roman, into the legs of iron, the feet of clay, in that kingdom, this little stone is coming. So see, they knew. They're like, hey, now I begin to understand this prophecy. We're in the Roman Empire, and we know it's during this Roman Empire that this little stone is coming. In the days of the Roman Empire, the God of heaven shall set up his kingdom and smash all the rest and fill the earth. This was a prophecy that was spoken to the greatest dictator in the world up to that point, Nebuchadnezzar. So you know that it was written down in the archives of Babylon. Everybody can go down to the library and get that book. You know, Daniel, he had many visions, man. He saw some wild stuff. Bears with bones in their mouth and flying creatures and everything else. One of these that he wrestled with, horns and the big horns and the little horns and all these things, going around with all these horns wrestling. He says, until I saw the Ancient of Days. The Ancient of Days came. Judgment was given to the saints of the Most High. And the time came that the saints possessed the kingdom. Thus he said, the fourth beast shall be the fourth kingdom upon the earth. Again, pointing right to the Roman Empire. And he says, in the days of that beast monster, the Roman Empire, given on the Euphrates River, a king shall come, and he'll be King of Kings. And who gave this prophecy? Daniel did. What was Daniel's title? He was a wise man of Babylon in the east. The wise men of Babylon. And Daniel, he began to chart and outline history. I mean, you go back and you read, go read Daniel 9. He begins to just line it out. Messiah shall come and he shall be cut off and you know, on all these things. He knew how long it would be from the decree that went out. Guys, they knew Isaiah 44 and 45, and Isaiah 45, a prophecy that was given by a Hebrew to the Hebrews said, there's going to be a king come whose name is Cyrus. And Cyrus is going to set up his kingdom, and he's going to send all you guys back to build the temple. Well, Daniel is there prophesying to Nebuchadnezzar and then Belshazzar, and he tells Belshazzar, look what's going to happen to you. There's going to be a king come, and he's going to take you down. And who came? Remember, that was a handwriting on the wall. A writing when Belshazzar was having his party, Cyrus shows up. Well, Daniel was second in command. So he gets rid of Belshazzar. Here's Daniel. Can you imagine Daniel coming over and looking at that King Cyrus and say, look, come here. Let me show you something. You didn't know this, but 650 years ago, our Hebrew God wrote your name down. Cyrus was going to come. Not only was you going to come in here and help the Hebrew people, you're also going to write a decree and send us back. See, our prophet Isaiah wrote 650 years ago. You're the king. What do you think Cyrus did? Do you think he recorded it? Absolutely. Recorded down, it's in Gentile prophecy. You know all the miracles that happened in Daniel there while they're in Babylon. I mean, Nebuchadnezzar sets up a statue. Now when you hear the music playing, everybody's got to bow down and worship. You know the story. And the three, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, they don't bow down and worship. They stand fast. And what happens? Heat the fire 7 times hotter, cast them into the fire. Nebuchadnezzar looks into the fire. What does he see? He doesn't see three, but he sees four walking around loosed. The only thing burning there was the things that bound them, the cords. You don't think these things were recorded and gave out to everybody to hear and to read about? And plus the fire was so hot that it consumed the men trying to throw them in. Daniel and the lions did. A lot of miracles took place. So you didn't have to be here in Israel. These things were taking place plumb over here on the Euphrates River. Daniel being the head guy of the Magi, of the wise men. Everything he's recording and doing is all right there, and this people that's coming up behind him. So it's all recorded there. These Magi are the successors of Daniel. That's where they come from. And you remember as Babylon, when they went into Babylon, they couldn't go back to the temple for Passover. I mean, you couldn't walk that, couldn't go back. Plus the temple was gone. So since they couldn't meet out like that, they started setting up synagogue. So every little place where the Jews were gathered out, they set up their little synagogue, like our little church buildings. They started meeting right there. And remember I told you earlier that every little town, Cedar Bluff, Raven, every one of them had their own gods. Now these crazy Hebrew peoples, they're worshiping an invisible God. And not only that, they worship only one God. And they become intrigued, and they begin to want to find out more. And then these Hebrews are worshiping this one God that we know about, Daniel. You see what I'm saying? We got it recorded from King Nebuchadnezzar. We know about Cyrus. And then these Hebrews over here in synagogue talking about this Messiah coming. And Daniel's talking about him and all the things that he's seen and wrote down. So we know they got their own book, and we understand all that. But this is coming from our own king. Nebuchadnezzar and Cyrus and all of these. You see what I'm talking about? It wasn't done in a corner. It wasn't done in a corner. So they had heard Messiah was coming. The world had, by the time Jesus had come, when he was born, can you imagine? The world, like now, the world had fallen deeper and deeper into apostasy and religion. Could you imagine really, you out there really, truly feeling guilty? For those who really did, their hearts began to long. Man, is this really true? Is there really a Messiah coming? Is there really a Christ? Is there really going to be this king? Is really, those who are oppressed, like we're singing, those who are weary, those who are hungry. So they began to be in anticipation of a Messiah. So I want you to get in the head of these Magi. They knew that in the days of the Roman Empire, but heck, the Roman Empire didn't last, it wasn't a 10-year empire. This thing went on for 1,000, 1,500 years. So something happened during this time to get these guys moving. Can you imagine them coming in when they seen Caesar? Caesar has taken over. The Roman Empire set up. Those Magi could have begun to rejoice and say, we're in the right dynasty now. We know he's coming. But something got them moving. Now we know, I've watched TV shows on this before. We know that at this particular time when Jesus was born, probably about 2 BC, that the planets had lined up. You guys have seen, the planets had lined up. We can prove that. But the thing about the planets lining up, you guys realize that's natural, right? They're just going to row, and it's going to be natural, and then go around. Like when we see Halley's Comet that comes around every 86 years. It's a natural thing. We know there was a comet in the sky at that particular time. They understood all of that, but I don't think that's what got them excited about making this journey. I believe that it was something like the glory cloud. You know, the glory cloud that moved by day and the night, or, you know, it was a fiery pillar at night and a glory cloud during the day that Israel saw and moved by. It was some expression of the glory of God, of God's glory in the sky, where they would understand it. See, we think God is hamstringed and only speaking one language or only doing things one way, but believe you me, He'll come right into our ignorance and speak in our hearts in a way that we can understand. So something would appear in the sky, some glory would appear in the sky, something these magi would understand to say, the king that you've been anticipating, the star of Jacob, the scepter, the one who's going to rule, the one that Daniel spoke about, the one that Nebuchadnezzar spoke about, he is born. He's been born. Could you imagine the excitement? I'll tell you, I believe it's the same thing that God got Abram out of the land of the Chaldeans. You know that Abraham was a moon god worshiper. The Chaldeans worshiping the moon god. Now what does that mean if you're worshiping the moon god? That means you're going out at night to do your worship service. Right? Because that's when the moon god's up. And you know what Stephen wrote about Abraham? The God of glory appeared to Abram. God of glory went right there while Abram is worshiping the moon god and appeared to Abraham and says, get thee out. And it was something Abraham could understand, and so Abraham got out. Same thing with these magi right here. Same thing with these magi. And what I'm saying is this thing appeared over here, and the star, this glory, didn't lead them all the way across the desert. They knew where he was going to be, right? They knew he was going to be in Judea. If it was the star that led them, why would the star lead them to Herod's temple? You ever think about that? Where did they go? They went straight to Herod's temple. Where is he that's born King of the Jews? And they speak of the star. They saw the star. That was past tense. They saw it in the east. It appeared to them and said, your king is born. Now, they knew where Judea was. So they saw the star, the glory, so they said, boom, let's head out of Dodge. So they headed out of Dodge. They knew to go to Judea. Now, the most common thing to do when you get to Judea would be to go to where the king's place is, because you know if there's any worship going on, it's going to be centered right here. So let's go up there. And they don't know anything about Herod. So Herod, you guys know, where is he that's born King of the Jews? So they hadn't seen the star in 2 years. But when they see the star again, the scripture says they rejoiced with exceeding joy, because as they left Herod's temple, now the star appears back to them again, and they follow that right to the location. This thing was, it wasn't a star in the sky, because this thing stood over the house. You read that right in there, right? This thing went stood over the house. So if we got a row of houses, you don't have to go knocking on the door. Is it house 141? Is it 243? Is it 116? The glory stood over this house and says, no need to knock on doors. It's this one right here. You with me? You remember the shepherds? They had a sign. Here's your sign. You'll go in and find the baby wrapped in swaddling clothes lying in a manger. The Magi didn't have that kind of sign, so that's why they turned up at Herod's temple. King Herod. Now, King Herod, he was a puppet king to Caesar. Do you know he was an Edomite? He wasn't even a Hebrew. I don't know if you knew that. And the Edomites hated the Jews. Hated the Jews. Because he was an Edomite. I mean, you can go trace this out. The Edomites, they come from Esau. This King Herod, he was a mad, crazy, cruel. Any threat to his throne, he murdered. Do you know, you guys know about the Sanhedrin, right? The 70 elders and all this. Do you know that when he took over king, he killed them all and appointed his own? Appointed his own high priest. Killed them all. Let everybody know I'm here. That would be like the president taking over, going down to Congress, killing every single one of them, and appointing his own. That's what he did. Didn't want no opposition. This guy killed his own 2 sons. As they began to grow up and began to get popular, they could be a threat to the throne. Killed 2 of his own sons. Caesar said, and you can history some of this stuff, Caesar said, I would rather be Herod's pig than one of his sons. And you know what everybody thought about pigs. And it's to this palace the Magi come and come up into Herod and say, where is he that's born King of Jews? Can you imagine? But see, he was very political, you know. He was like Gaddafi. He was a madman general, but very political. When you find him, come and let me know, because I want to go worship him too. See, you don't go into Herod and say, where's he born that's king of the Jews? Now back over here, let me get back over here to Matthew. So these Magi, they head on. They see the star again. They rejoice with exceeding joy, and they come to the house. They saw the young child, probably about a year and a half old, with Mary, his mother. They fell down and worshipped. When they had opened their treasures, they gave him gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. And then they have the dream, don't go back to Herod. At the same time, Joseph has a dream. Get up, get out of Dodge. Right? Now, that word there, worship, it's not a Hebrew word there. It's an adoration. It's what the Gentiles, it's a word for adoration. And this is when Herod gives the order to kill all the babies 2 years old and younger in Bethlehem. And we know that Matthew here quotes from the prophet of that Rachel weeping for her children. And he's trying to give them reassurance and let them know, look, the reason you're weeping is because Messiah has been born. Now I know that your children are dead, and we know this was going to take place, but look, you at the same time you can rejoice because the King of Kings has come. That's the only reason your children are going through it. That's the only reason you're going through it, because Messiah is here. Now, it wasn't long after this, Joseph takes Mary and they go down to Egypt for a while, that the prophecy might be fulfilled. I called my son out of Egypt. And then here it comes to Joseph in a dream again and says, you can go back, Herod's dead. Well, when Herod died, his worst son took over, Archelaus or something like that. Just to let everybody know, he showed up at Passover. He had 3,000 Jews murdered, just so he could tell everybody, I'm the new king. This was what was going on. I mean, this was utmost oppression. Can you imagine? The king of the Hebrews, an Edomite, hates the Jews, kills 3,000 of them that came up to Passover, and then who are you going to report to? Caesar? This was the state of affairs that was going on to those who was promised the king. It wasn't some fuzzy painted picture on a Christmas card. So when Joseph and Mary is coming back out of Egypt, they're headed back to Bethlehem, and God tells them, turn your donkey around, go back to Nazareth. It's not safe to have the baby raised up. So he turns and goes to Galilee. Jesus is raised a Nazarene. Nazareth. When I look at this story, I think, well, where are we? And I say, you know who we are. We're not Hebrews. We're not Jews. We're those who was hearing this prophecy over here on the Babylon River. We're the nations. You remember we talked about a light given to the Gentiles? We're the nations. We're those who have come. We're the new Magi. We are those who have come to worship the King. We know Him as King in a way that these wise men never knew that He was King. I mean, we know now that the star has risen out of Jacob that Balaam prophesied about. What did John say? Jesus is the bright and the morning star. Peter said, till that day star is risen in your heart. He's the scepter. He's the rule. He's Shalom. We know that all authority is given unto Him in heaven and in earth. I mean, we look how God moved in these stories. Gave dreams. The genealogy when we thought, there's no way He could bring this to pass. Nothing could stop God's purposes. Herod couldn't stop it. Caesar couldn't stop it. The world couldn't stop it. God was going to bring His purpose to pass. Yeah. That's why He told Balaam saw it. God is not a man that He should lie. I can't change His mind and you can't stop it. He's going to bless. Yes. Hallelujah. I mean, look at this scripture. Let me just give you a few scriptures here. Look at this. Paul and them got a hold of it. And it says, because we know that He raised from the dead, which He wrought in Christ when He raised Him from the dead. Set Him at His own right hand in the heavenly places. Now just listen to these two words here. Far above. Do you ever just say that? This doesn't mean far away. Don't get that in your mind that He's way out there somewhere. But far above. Remember, this whole time, Patty, everything wanted to kill Him. Yes. Every demon power, every nation, every person thronged about and wanted to have Him put to death. But when God raised Him from the dead, He put Him out of reach of everything that could touch Him or drag Him down again. And we're raised with Him far above all principalities and powers and might and dominion and every name that is named. Far above. Let me tell you what John the Revelator saw the Magi. Let me tell you what John wrote when he saw the Magi. I'm almost finished here. John the Revelator saw the Magi. John was the one who began to weep, wasn't he? He began to weep, and what did one of the elders say? Weep not, John. Don't weep anymore, John. One of the elders says, weep not, behold, the Lion of the tribe of Judah, the root of David, hath prevailed to open the book. And behold, and lo, in the midst of the throne, and the four living creatures, and in the midst of the elders stood a lamb, as it had been slain. 7 heads and 7 eyes. I mean, this is almost like a Daniel prophecy here, isn't it? Well, they taken the book. I'm just kind of skimming over. They had taken the book. The 4 beasts, the four living creatures, the 24 elders fell down before the Lamb, having every one of them harps, golden vials full of odors, which are the prayers of the saints. And they sang a new song, saying, Thou art worthy to open the seal, to take the book, to open the seals thereof. For Thou wast slain and hast redeemed us by God, redeemed us to God by the blood out of every kindred, tongue, people and nations. That's me and you. And He's made us a kingdom of priests. And I beheld and heard the voice of many angels. See these magi? This wasn't just 2 or 3 wise men coming. This was a train of people that came. Even in those days to Herod. That's why Herod was so upset. Looking at all these camels coming. And now John sees it. And I beheld and heard the voice of many angels round about the throne. The living creatures, the elders, and the number of them, the number of the magi, the number of the wise men that come to worship the King was 10,000 times 10,000 and thousands of thousands. All saying with a loud voice, "Worthy is the Lamb." You ever just say that? Do you ever read that verse out loud? Do you ever in the mix and muck of everything that's going on in your life, Kathy, say, "Wait a minute. Worthy is the Lamb"? I don't care what's going on. I know He's worthy. I know He's redeemed me. I know He's redeemed me. How? By His own precious blood. And He's blessed, and you cannot curse it. You might think you can, but you can't. God's not a man that He should lie. Worthy is the Lamb that was slain to receive power and riches and wisdom and strength and honor and glory and blessing. Guys, if we were ever looking for a king, we thought the Messiah was coming, and all I know is this one now. I know He's the only one that's worthy. God has showed Him, and God has shown what He's done, and I have seen. Because we think, well, Nebuchadnezzar had some flaws, Cyrus had some flaws, David had some flaws, Solomon had some flaws, all these kings had some flaws, but this one and the only one is worthy. There's not another one worthy. None. This one only is worthy. And every creation which is in heaven, and on the earth and under the earth, and such as are in the sea, and all them, heard I say. And see, ain't this something? They all heard I say. They all heard me say. Blessing and honor and glory and power be to Him that sitteth upon the throne, and unto the Lamb forever. And the 4 living creatures said, Amen. The 24 elders fell down and worshipped Him that liveth forever and ever. Do you see the Magi? They come to a little baby. They come to a little baby, 2-year-old, come down there to the house, and they brought all these gifts. But John is seeing the real coronation of the real king. The real coronation, the one that you and I are involved with. Because God came into humanity. He moves on to His finished work in the cross, His death, burial, and resurrection. And not only death, burial, and resurrection, we forget this other part, His ascension. And in that ascension, He becomes the only true king. The king of the universe. I got to ask you a question. How do you know He's king? I'm just throwing this out there. Not to bust your bubble, but I want to ask you that question. How do you know He's king? You know, every year when the president, or every 4 years when the president wins the election, how do you know he won the election? Those are just numbers they put up on the screen, but there's a ceremony that takes place. And everybody gets on TV, and he stands there in front of the crowd, and here comes the old preacher, and he puts his hand on the Bible, right? And he makes the solemn oath, right? Well, how do you know Jesus is king? Was you there when He was crowned? Let me just tell you something. And this used to take place in England. Because, England was a big empire. It was spread out all over the place. And they didn't have Facebook and Twitter and email and all of that. And when one king would die, they would crown a new king. But how's the people in northern England going to know? And Ireland and Scotland and France that a new king is on the scene? What they would do, as soon as the king was crowned, a runner would begin to run, saying, God save the king. And he would run out and see, they were all anticipating a new king. They were anticipating a new king. They know he's old and a new one's going to, a new one's on the scene. The runner would begin to run, and they would begin to hear the voices. God save the king, God save the king. Well, he's just not running through the streets. Over here on this hill, they got a tower set up with this wood ready, and they got a guy there with a torch in his hand, and he's ready to light the fire at any moment. As soon as he hears the words, God save the king, he puts his torch into that fire. Boom, the fire starts on this hill. Well, this guy over here on this hill, he sees the fire. Wait a minute. And he begins to proclaim, God save the king. He lights his fire. And boom, this guy over here on his hill, he sees the fire going. And he begins to proclaim, God save the king. And it's all about seeing the fire. Well, my God, what happened on the day of Pentecost? You wasn't there 2,000 years ago, but the fire got lit. The fire began to spread. Jesus says, what will I come to set a fire. And he came and set the fire. And here it comes. And that's why Peter jumped off and began to say, wait a minute. We heard about David, but this is one like David, but not David himself. We know David is dead and in a sepulcher to this day. But this one, he said, my Holy One I would not leave his soul in hell or suffer him to see corruption. And he says, this same Jesus that you crucified. Now, what is he speaking from? The fire has been lit. The book of Acts starts with the fire coming down on Peter. They thought he was drunk. He just heard that this king has just been crowned. And he says, that same Jesus that you crucified, God has raised him up and made him both Lord and Christ. The fire's been lit. God save the king. He's king far above all principalities, powers, and might, and dominion, and every name. And I know that he's worthy. He's worthy to receive it all riches